Hello, welcome to the Student Pages podcast. I have Suzi Ruffell here with me, the comedian Suzi Ruffell. How you doing, Suzi?
I'm very well. I liked how many times you said the word Suzi in that first opening bit, just so everyone's very sure it's me.
When you come on a Apollo, do you get to choose your entrance music?
You do, yeah.
Do you actually?
Yeah. So
Always wondered this.
Yeah, you choose your own track. You have to give them a couple of options, but you give them your first choice, and then they've got to get... I don't know whether they get permission from the artist or whether the artists are on a list that people say that they can use their music, but yeah, you get to choose. So I had Fit But You Know It but by The Streets. Not because I'm fit but I know it, but because it's got that really dun 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 dun. And I thought that would look really cool with the smoke filling the stage and the thing going up and the lights going wild. Because it's got a nice long intro to walk into. And it's also, I used to... I really like The Streets, so I've been to see them a lot, so it made sense for me to walk onto them.
You must have felt like a boss getting to pick your own music.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's
pretty cool. It's awesome doing Apollo because it is sort of, it's a real hype. It's a real great show. It's something that you watch growing up. You know that it's this like big deal TV show that you've seen everyone do from McIntyre, Kevin Bridges, Joan Rivers. Everyone's done it, and so. Getting the call to do it is incredible. And then, you get driven there really early. You have to wait all day. You do like a run through on the stage. You see how big it is. Like, you know that it's big. Like, I'd seen shows there before and I've played there before opening for Josh Widdicombe. But Apollo, all the lights are on so that you can get shots of the audience laughing.
Oh, really?
So the lights are up. So it's this totally different scenario to how you'd usually play a gig, because usually it's very dark.
How many people can you see everyone?
Well, you can see like the first... So like I think... So it's 3,500. You can see most of downstairs to a degree, and then you can see like faces or you can see movement upstairs. So it's... and you can see a lot and you can see people running around with like cameras and... The guys holding, I think they're called the grips, the guys that are holding the wires and stuff and running around to get shots and to get shots of you and to get shots of the crowd. And so, it's pretty cool to walk out and for people to, the moment the sign lifts, because you walk underneath it, the Apollo sign, and the smoke fills the stage, it sort of felt like something that I'd been desperate to do for such a long time. And it was pretty cool to do it.
I'd love to come out to just like really sad music and just bomb as well. I'd love to bomb.
I think that you say that, but you would actually hate it.
No, but just the experience saying, I bombed at the Apollo on purpose, and great, I came out to Elliott Smith and everyone was really miserable.
I mean, there are horror stories of people having tough Apollos.
Really?
Yeah, but I would never tell you who.
As in they show it, they don't show it?
No, they just, the edit is...
flattering.
Well, it's not the edit, there's not really that they change anything really, it's just that you get angles of people that are enjoying your set more.
Yeah.
But it's, it can be, it's known to be quite a tough gig, because especially if you're not a massive famous person, people are like, oh, who's this? Because we've just queued for like 3 hours outside.
Yeah.
But generally, I think people have nice gigs there. But I've heard horror stories.
Wow. I really want to know these.
I mean, if you
stories.
Google hard enough, you'll find them.
Okay, I'm sure. Anyway, have you been since Edinburgh?
Since Edinburgh, I've been very good. I've been touring the country with my solo tour, and then I've been doing quite a few TV bits, which has been lots of fun. So it's just doing comedy.
Can you tell us about the TV bits?
Yeah, of course. What have I done since I've got back? Dave Gorman's Terms and Conditions, which is a new show for Dave, which is really fun. And then an episode of There's Something About Movies, which is Alan Carr's show for Sky One, which was amazing because on the panel every week is Tom Allen, who's a really dear friend of mine, and Jennifer Saunders, who's a hero of mine. And then on our episode, and then Michael Sheen's the team captain on the other side. And then on my episode was Josh Widdicombe, who's one of my best mates. And then the other person that was on the show was Sean Bean. And so it was just this really mad day of being like afterwards you have a drink in the green room.
Yeah.
I'm still very much like, a jobbing comic. I go out on the road. I sometimes do the clubs still, but generally I'm just touring by myself. But I'm not, famous. And so you're just in like a green room afterwards having a drink and being like, well, you're Sean Bean. you're Michael Sheen, you've been nominated for an Oscar, this is huge.
And then you're with your mates as well.
Yeah, you're with your mates, and you're also with Jennifer Saunders, and you're sort of like having these things with your mates, because like some of my mates are now famous, but I obviously knew them before they were, like Josh and Tom. So you're like, God, this is a strange life, but it's really fun. So I did that. That was awesome. That went out a couple of weeks, last week on Sky, it was really fun. I told Alan Carter F off, and amazingly it made because I know Alan, because I used to do some of his support, and I assumed it wouldn't make the edit because he didn't give me a point for something, and I was like, oh, F off. And he was like, oh, that's nice, isn't it, coming on my show and then telling me to do that? And I assumed they wouldn't keep it in, and then my mum texted me and was like, oh, you were rude to Alan. I was like, oh, sorry. But apparently it was very funny. So, but I never watch those things back, so apparently it was funny.
You don't ever, if you do like a panel show or something, you watch it back and you're like, they cut out that really funny thing I said.
No, because there's nothing you can do once the edit's done.
Right.
You have no say over it. All you can do is turn up on the day, do the work, know the subjects you're talking about, have read the news if you're doing mock, and go for it. But once it's out, you have no control over the edit. You can't say, can you keep that gag in? You can't say anything. Yeah. It's down to whoever's doing the cut and the producer. So it's sort of pointless to...
Was that... If you is Mock more scary? As in, Mock the Week, by the way.
Yeah.
Guys. Is Mock the Week more scary than Apollo?
Because it's just sort of different. Apollo's and Mock is a really long record, so you're there for like 2 and a bit hours.
Right.
So you've got time to sort of relax.
Okay.
You're being filmed the whole time. You play off other people. So I'm doing it next week. I think Rhys James is on. And I know Rhys, and so hopefully we'll have a bit back and forth. Hopefully there'll be some running gags that we can get in.
Yeah.
But it's nerve-wracking because you're doing new material on telly, because you've written you go, oh, okay, well, what can I say about the election? The election will definitely come up in one of the questions. Let me have some stuff prepped for that. And so that's nerve-wracking. But then Apollo's scarier in a different way, because you go, well, this is a chunk of me doing what I do, and so people will either like it or they won't. And you want to have, and that's what I do. I'm not I don't want to be a panel show, like someone that just does panel shows. I'm a stand-up. That's my job. And so that was more, I guess it's just scary in different ways. But Mock, there's Apollo, it's all on you, but with Mock there's a sense of playfulness, because it's like throwing a ball to someone, oh, okay, we'll keep it up for a bit, try and get something running. But it's a different thing.
Fair enough. I can understand that. I feel like with Apollo, there must be kind of immense pressure to kind of have the best gig of your life.
Yeah.
If you're not hearing thunderous laughter, to the rooftops, you'd be like, well, I'm here and it's... No,
but I think that I was really lucky that I had I had a particularly nice one, and I really liked the material that I did for it, and it really clicked with the audience that night. But, there'll be plenty of people who are household names that didn't enjoy their first live at Apollo. Okay. Yeah. Because it's a room that's set up for music. The ceiling's slightly too high. The audience are lit, so they feel like they're being watched, because they are, because there's a camera near them, and so they don't really relax as much as they would in a dark theatre. So it's just lots of different factors, but it's all comedy on telly is sort of spinning plates.
Yeah, definitely.
But the thing with Apollo is that you get one stab at it. So you record for about 18 minutes. One edit is for 12 minutes, one edit is for 8 minutes, depending on how long the length of the show. They have one show that goes out an hour, one show that goes out half. And then you've just got that time to go, oh, I hope I smash this.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Yeah.
It's like doing your exams. It's like doing your exams. It's like like mock is your dissertation. You've got time to work on it.
Although, I suppose if you're doing your exam, you don't find out you've messed it up until much later.
No, but surely you'd have I didn't go to university, but surely you'd sort of know if you were like, oh, I forgot to turn the page, I didn't read the other side or something.
I did that in my A-levels.
You didn't?
No, in my last A-level exam, I did English. It wasn't quite that. I answered the wrong... It was an English exam, so I answered the wrong question for the right texts. So I read it wrong, and I just swapped the text that was in the question with my text. And then in the last 5 minutes of the exam, honestly, I've never felt like my heart has literally sank in my chest.
Oh no!
But I tried to just change the essay so it matched the question, because they were luckily quite similar questions. Just rushing through, changing things.
And how did you go? Did you pass? Obviously, you must have. Sure.
Yeah, but I was 1 mark off what I needed to make my uni place. 1 mark, and I got it remarked same mark.
Oh, gutting. So you went to a different university because of that?
No, luckily the uni was like, they
were understanding.
They understood, yeah.
Oh, see, I went to drama school, and I'm not naturally academic, so school wasn't a great place for me. But I've never, see, that sort of thing I find terrifying, like having to learn that sort of, like doing exams, whereas stand-up, I'm like, yeah, pass me a microphone, I'll be fine.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's just different things, isn't it?
Do you, I shouldn't ask too much about the Apollo. I just want one more thing.
It's fine, go for it.
Because it's a big room, do you have to wait for the laugh to kind of travel to you?
Yeah.
I've always wondered that.
So you don't wait for the laugh to travel to you as much, but they make more noise.
Right.
So it sort of depends on the type of theatre it is. So if it's a really high, this is like really like into comedy now, but if it's a really high ceiling, like if you walk into a room and you're like, oh, it's a really high ceiling, you're like, meh, it won't be a great gig because the laugh gets lost. Whereas if it's a low ceiling, that's why the Comedy Store in the West End, the ceiling's really low because the laugh can't go anywhere, it just hits the roof and comes back. So it hits you really quickly. Whereas if there's more than 2,000 people in, you just wait longer between laughs. And also in those rooms, if you've got the confidence to wait, to pause, your laugh will be longer. Whereas if you start talking, people will stop laughing because they need to hear you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wow. This stuff is serious.
Well, I mean, there's sort of a science to it, but I wouldn't...
Not an exact one.
No, not at all. And it's ever changing, but you want a low ceiling.
I did a when I was at school, I did a project. It's like you get half an A level for it. And then you could do a project about whatever you want.
Okay.
And you can make it a practical thing, or you can have like a, what do they call it?
Vocational?
Like some kind of material thing that you do, like creating an object.
Okay, sure.
Putting on something. So I put on a comedy night at my school, and I was like, I need to have red brick in the back.
That's because of Seinfeld.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like if I have red brick, so I had fake red bricks.
Great.
Found them online, and I painted, every lunch break I'd go and paint another section of red brick. It was such a waste of time.
But there are clubs that are sort of that do have red brick walls at the back.
I like the intimacy of it.
And it's sort of a New York style of a comedy club, which is why Seinfeld has that. But it is quite cool.
I would have got a neon sign as well, but unfortunately not. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Edinburgh.
Sure.
Did you have a fun Edinburgh?
Yeah, I had a really fun Edinburgh. So I've done a bunch of shows up there now. This one was probably the one that was sort of most critically acclaimed, for want of a better word.
Bravo.
And thanks. And the run sold out really quickly, which was really nice. So like day 5, I think the whole run sold out. So I knew I didn't have to worry about getting an audience, because that's a massive thing in Edinburgh. Certainly when you're coming up, when you're a new stand-up, like there's just so many shows at the Fringe. There's thousands of shows at the Fringe. And trying to like carve out a market where you're trying to get 100 people to choose you every single night, it's really tough when you start out. And so it was really nice to get to a stage where I didn't have to worry about numbers, and I knew people were coming, and I knew that people were sort of looking forward to it.
You could just focus on the show.
On the show, yeah, exactly. And I enjoy Edinburgh. I don't love it because the idea of it is a lot more fun. The idea of it, and certainly when you're a new act and you haven't got the pressure of like the critic from the Times is in tonight or whatever, you boozing every night, and you go out and it's loads of fun, and you're back late, but it doesn't really matter because like who's coming to see you the next day? You're just working on your craft and trying to get better. But once you're in a place where you're like, oh, okay, well, that person from the BBC's in, or that person from Dave's in, and you know that you need to like smash it every night, then you're like, I've done my show and I've had one beer, I'm going home to bed, I'm being a good girl. So it's a different kind of Edinburgh for me this year, or the last 2 years, I guess, or 3 years. But it was still really fun, but I prefer touring it. So now I'm on this sort of big tour. I've got a really nice sort of autumn and spring, which is either me doing my own tour show, me doing bits of telly stuff, sort of doing 1 episodes of different shows or 2 episodes of different shows, or I'm opening for Josh Widdicombe. So I'm just going around the country playing to great audiences for the next sort of few months, which is utter joy.
And you don't, do you ever, I mean, how long have you been doing this show now?
This show, this is the one that I took to Edinburgh. So the first proper night of it was the 31st of July. And then I did it 27 times. I did a few extra shows in Edinburgh, 27 times in Edinburgh. And then I had a little break from it. And then I've done about 10 dates of the tour now.
So I don't want to say like, do you get bored of it? But do you ever feel like
no? That's
it's
like a valid question. No, but that's sort of what you can do in your own tour. So it's you have to find. It's like I guess it's like being in a play to some degree. You know, you've got to find something. You know, there's people that are in the West End that will do shows for like 2 years, and you've got to find something fresh. And you also, you know, the audience will bring an excited energy every night. You're sharing this story with them. You know, what I do is sort of storytelling, confessional stand-up about my life. And so, you know, the fun thing about a tour audience is I find that the chat that you get on tour with audiences, sort of the banter, will be much better than in a comedy club because people sort of have invested in you a bit more. They might know you a bit more. They might be a bit willing to talk to you a bit more. Like last night I had a couple in the front row in Folkestone who were definitely on a first date. And so I was like, so who organised me as the first date? And the guy looked unsure. And so I was like, okay, so it's the girl. And so then there's lots of, you know, without wanting to like embarrass them or make them feel silly, because I hate all of that. But there's obviously lots to go with on that. So like he had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
And she was a fan of mine. And so I'm like, right, so you're working out through me whether you've got the same sense of humour to carry on to have another date, and that's a really fun thing to play with.
I love it.
That's the only that's only going to happen once across the tour.
I love that sense that comedians have when they see people in the audience and they just know. I feel like comedians are really good at that, being able to work out like what date someone's on or where.
I think it's just from hours on stage.
Yeah,
like I think that's the only way. Like when people say like, oh, you know, you're often asked in interviews or when you meet newer comics, like, oh, what advice would you give? And you're like, the only thing you can do is be on stage. Like this is where you learn everything. Like obviously you need to write lots as well, and that's another process that's really tough, and you work out how to do that in your own way. But it's hours and hours and hours on stage that make you learn. Like you can sort of work out, you can go, that woman is not making that much eye contact with me, so she's not going to be a great person to talk to because she's not super confident. However, this guy that's sort of leaned back, he's like he's spread out a bit, not in a cocky way, but he's got a sort of a sense of ownership. You're like, you have the confidence to talk to me.
This is why I always get picked on at comedy show. I sit right at the front and I'm grinning the whole way through.
But then that's sort of what you want. But then I guess some comics like doing this, some audience members like it, but I don't really like being mean to the audience. I'm not a massive fan of that style of, I think some people are amazing at it, but that style of like really putting down someone for no reason or being like unnecessarily mean or ageist or crude to people for no reason, I just think it's really cheap.
Yeah.
I think it's really cheap form of comedy, insult comedy. I mean, some people do it brilliantly, it's just not for me. And I think there's a lot of stuff with comedy in that like I've got friends that would be like, oh, I'd never go to comedy because I'd be terrified that someone would pick on me.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot less than people assume it does.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's something that happened sort of in the 90s and early 2000s a bit more, but now I think comedy's a bit more woke.
Yeah. I mean, how do you MC?
Oh, I just talk to people, but only people that I can sort of tell are willing to be spoken to. And if you chat to someone and you can tell they're hating it, I just move on really quickly. Because the last thing I want to do is, like, if someone pays to come and see you, for them then to have a horrible time is like my worst nightmare. Because it's, you know, it's expensive to go out to comedy, and it's, you know, I really value every person that buys a ticket to the tour that want to come out and support me. So I don't want them to go home being like, oh God, I hated sitting in the front row. I wish you didn't keep talking to me. That was so embarrassing. I'm really shy. I didn't know that my seat was in the front. That was the only seat left, or whatever.
I mean, the thing is, when people ask me to MC or if I try and MC something, genuinely, I am so much more scared. than the person I'm talking to.
Of course. Well, yeah, I mean, and again, it's like anything, it's practice.
Yeah.
I hosted a lot for sort of in the earlier part of my career. I hosted, maybe 4 or 5 nights a week, and you just get really used to it.
Yeah.
It's just practice, really, and go, oh, there's a family there. I'll talk to that mother and daughter. I've then got some material about my mum. That all links up quite nicely. Okay, there's people on a date. I'll chat to them. I'll talk about my dating life. You can sort of make it feel like it's a big conversation.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing of being comfortable on stage as well, and
exactly,
getting the stage time
and just years in it.
Yeah, my goodness. And for your Edinburgh show, like, how did you? Just 'cause so many comedians have so many different ways of like writing their shows. I've heard some people say they try and write 5 minutes a month, or some people who they write the whole thing in March and then they workshop it. What's your process?
So I do. So this year I knew that I wanted to talk about being happy. I knew that was what I knew. I wanted to do a show that was. I feel like the world's a very bleak place at the moment, and I wanted to do a show that was very joyful. Because that's what I need at the moment. And there's loads of brilliant comics that do loads of satirical, hilarious political stuff, but it's not really what I do. And so I knew I wanted to write a show that was about happiness. I've always got a book that's with me at all times that's just got notes in of like, oh, that funny thing that happened, or that school thing, or that memory of that thing, or isn't it amusing how people react like this to each other, or there'll be lots of different things that I've thought about, or there'll be notes in my phone. And then I just sort of write bit by bit. I know I knew the show was going to be about happiness, but it could have sort of gone in any direction. But I write ideas down, and then I go and workshop them at new material nights where there's no pressure and the audience haven't paid very much, and I can go on with loads of notes and go, does anybody else think this? Because this happened to me the other day. And you'll get a titter or you'll get a few laughs and you'll go, okay, tick that. That's an idea that works. Does anyone else feel like this? That's literally just me. There's nothing in that.
Yeah.
And I sort of work it out like that. But I could never sit down and write I don't sit down and write for hours. I sit down and write for like 20-minute stints and then go and try those bits. I think you're either someone that writes really well and then you don't need to gig it as much.
Right.
Whereas I don't think I think I write fine, but I do like 30 previews before I go to Edinburgh. So I'm like constantly making changes, constantly cutting bits. I'm really cutthroat with material. Like if it stops working, I'm like cutting it all the time.
Yeah. So
that you're even if you're like left with 40 minutes in July and you're like, I need to write another 10 minutes, I'd sooner do that than take up something that I didn't totally believe in.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite place to try new stuff?
There's a few places. There's a really good night in Peckham called Rye Laughs that my friend runs. That's really nice. The Camden Comedy Club, my friend Jessica Foster-Q runs a night called Hooners Club. These are very London-centric, sorry guys. But they're probably my favourite places.
And to avoid being London-centric, do you have a favourite city in the UK?
No, there's loads of places that are great. Like I always do Manchester on tour, Birmingham's great, Nottingham's great, Brighton's great, Oxford's brilliant. I'm going to Oxford tonight to open for Josh. But I also do my tour shows there. And then you'll go to places that are like way, you go to like Cumbria or Whitehaven or somewhere that's like really far, North Devon. And often you'll go to those places and they'll be really great because people are so happy that you've come to their local theatre and people are up for it because there's something on in their local village hall or whatever. And so generally you can find a good crowd in most cities.
Yeah.
Generally.
I wanted to ask as well, because at the moment I'm kind of starting to do club gigs and kind of breaking in. And one of the things that's weird for me is I'm used to doing gigs where there's no green room, where it's just open mics, where you just have to sort of sit in the room. And now it feels weird, kind of. I get into a green room and I'm with people who are a lot more experienced than me, and it's kind of intimidating. Yeah. Because I don't know. I want to be kind of fun and joke around, but at the same time I don't want to, say something not funny or disrespect these guys in some way.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of? Do you feel like there's like a kind of green room culture? Etiquette or? When you started out, did you?
I remember feeling it in places like the Comedy Store, because I mean, it's becoming less so, but for a long time it's been a very boysy, male environment. And it was really like to give you an idea, I did live at the Apollo before I did a weekend at the store.
Uh-huh.
So like it's you know, they're quite like, even though I was totally ready to do gigs for them, it felt like quite a closed shop for a long time for me. I play there quite a lot now and they're very nice to me. But I think that you don't need to perform in a green room.
Yeah.
I think like save your act for on stage.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's the thing, because I think you can be in a green room and like quite often people are like working through bits, or like that you're catching up with people that you haven't seen for ages. And you know, I'm sure that I was guilty of it as well. You like want to be funny in front of like bigger comics, but it's like just be funny on stage.
I was yesterday I was in a green room with, do you know Mike Wilmot?
Yeah, I know Uncle Mike.
Yeah, I was with him and at the start, I was like, maybe I'll try and.
Hey kid, how are you? How's it going, kid? Yeah.
I was like, maybe I'll try and join in and make some jokes, or like try and take the piss. And I was like, this is going to be impossible.
You won't win with Uncle Mike.
I'm just going to listen, because everything he does is like, that would be my closer.
Yeah.
Everything he says.
Yeah, he's really funny.
He's so.
But
Mike
again, it's just
Wilmot.
years in the game. He's just been going for like 30 years, maybe.
I'm longer.
Maybe.
I think.
Yeah, he's been going forever.
He told me he started in '86.
Okay, that's 33.
Proper old school comic.
That's 33. Yeah.
Oh wow, that was quick maths.
Oh, that's how old I am.
Oh.
That's why I can work it out.
Oh, okay.
I was born in 86.
That makes sense. He said he came to the country when I was -5.
There you go.
So yeah, he's been in the game a long time.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think just be yourself, but just don't feel the need to perform.
There we go. Oh, I'm getting advice here. This is brilliant. I had something I wanted to do actually. Gonna, maybe make this a thing. I'm not sure, and it's folded up in this little box I brought.
Okay.
But I do this thing with my friends called the Night Off Triangle.
Okay.
And so at the top of the triangle is casual meetup.
Okay.
And then you've got out, and then you've got stay in, and there's your
And this is a night off of comedy.
So like a night to yourself. What would you be?
Oh my God!
You've straight away put it on
straight away staying in. But how old are you?
20.
Yeah. See, I'm 33. I've had so many nights out. Oh, I've done so many nights out. I mean, it depends who the out would be with, who the casual meetup would be with, but generally, I mean, I'm at the stage at the moment where it's really full steam ahead with the tour, and so you're really busy or doing different bits and pieces or writing jobs, and it's quite it's quite rare to have a night off where I'm not running back from somewhere at a reasonable time to try and hang out for a bit with my girlfriend.
That makes sense.
So I've become quite boring, and I love it.
There we go. Well, I'm sure I'll get there.
In 13 years.
Thanks so much for coming, Suzi.
Oh, my pleasure. Good luck with stand-up. I'll see you in a green room.
You too. Thanks so much for listening, guys. That's been Student Pages podcast.